You know, it's funny. Usually when we talk about some massive life-altering event, there is this expectation of a really dramatic buildup.
Oh, totally. Like the storm clouds gather, the music swells in the background.
Right, exactly. You expect to get a letter in the mail with a fancy wax seal, or at least see it coming from a mile away.
Yeah, we culturally expect a grand entrance for grand moments. We want, a billboard announcing that our lives are about to completely change.
But we are looking at a landscape today where the most profound, reality-bending encounters happen on a random Tuesday. Right when you're just trying to take a nap, honestly.
Which is such a wild contrast.
It really is. So today, we are unpacking an incredibly insightful commentary by two thinkers, Dawn and Katik. And we're focusing on a specific ancient text, Genesis chapter 18, verses 1 through 15.
It's a great section.
It is. Our mission for this deep dive is to discover how a sweaty, seemingly ordinary afternoon in the desert transformed into an absolute masterclass on spiritual awareness.
And I've actually set my background today to these ancient, sprawling desert oaks, the oaks of Mamre.
Oh, nice. Setting the scene.
Yeah, because understanding the physical environment of this text really forces us to look at how we behave when we think nothing important is happening. The physical realities of the ancient Near East dictated the entire rhythm of human life.
Right, so picture the crushing midday heat, the kind of heat that literally forces you to just stop moving.
Exactly.
And that is exactly where the narrative starts. We are looking at the art of noticing. Abraham is just sitting by his tent door in the heat of the day.
And in that specific climate, the heat of the day is a universal pause button. I mean, nobody is traveling, nobody is working the herds.
You just pass out.
Right, you see shade, you conserve energy, and you basically just try to survive the sun. It is a period of intense, necessary passivity. You are physically and mentally checked out.
Which I think makes his next move even more shocking. The text says the Almighty appears by the oaks of Mamre, but Abraham doesn't just get a magical tap on the shoulder.
No, not at all.
He lifts his eyes, he looks, he beholds three men, and then he runs to meet them and bows to the ground. And Dawn and Katik make a brilliant first observation here.
They really do.
They point out that this entire sequence is about active spiritual awareness.
Yeah, they draw this really sharp distinction between the presence of the divine and our perception of it. Because, we might not see the Holy One physically walking toward our front door.
Right.
But encountering that presence requires a purposeful physical and mental shift.
Okay, let's unpack this. It's like walking right past a brilliant, once-in-a-lifetime sunrise, or completely missing that a close friend is on the verge of tears, all because you're staring down at your phone.
Oh, that is such a good analogy.
Right, because the profound event is happening right in your vicinity. But if you don't intentionally lift up your eyes, you miss the encounter entirely. The event occurs, but your experience of it is absolute zero.
What's fascinating here is that the physical shift that Dawn and Katik highlight. Abraham goes from this passive survival mode, resting in oppressive heat, to sudden explosive active movement.
He literally runs.
He runs and he bows.
Yeah.
And Dawn and Katik underscore this powerful principle. Presence is a promise, but recognition is a practice.
Ooh, recognition is a practice. I like that.
Right. We're often told the divine presence is always with us, but actually experiencing it requires an active engagement with your surroundings. Abraham chose to look. He chose to behold.
He chose to interrupt his own comfort when he had every cultural excuse to just keep his eyes closed.
Exactly. And that active recognition is the threshold of the entire narrative. Without that choice, the three men simply walk by, and it remains just another hot, dusty, forgettable afternoon.
Wow.
The willingness to lift your eyes is the prerequisite for everything else.
So active recognition gets you to the door, but noticing is really only half the battle. Because once Abraham actually sees them, the way he introduces himself dictates the entire flow of the encounter.
Yeah, he doesn't presume anything.
No, he positions himself.
He adopts a very, very specific posture of humility.
And the language he uses is wild when you slow down and read it. Abraham says, "My Almighty, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant."
It's so deferential.
Dawn and Katik's second observation hones right in on this. They point out that Abraham uses a conditional statement, "if I have found favor."
Right, it is not an assumption.
Exactly. He is actively seeking validation of his favor, remembering that it is the Almighty's favor alone that allows for this deep fellowship in the first place.
He isn't demanding an audience. He is requesting the privilege of being a host. And that is a subtle but massive psychological difference.
I mean, I have to push back a little bit on how jarring this is for a modern listener.
Oh, for sure.
In today's culture, you and I are constantly told to do the exact opposite. We are fed this steady diet of, claim your space, assume your worth, demand what you want.
Walk into the room like you own it.
Exactly. And here's Abraham, this major, incredibly wealthy patriarch, doing the exact opposite. He is literally bowing in the dirt saying, please, if you actually like me, don't walk past my house.
This raises an important question for anyone listening, really. How do you approach moments of awe or potential divine encounters? Do you approach them with modern entitlement or with an ancient sense of privilege? Dawn and Khadik's analysis helps us understand the underlying mechanics of Abraham's humility here.
How so?
Well, this isn't about Abraham having low self-esteem or being overly self-deprecating. It's highly strategic in a spiritual sense.
Wait, strategic how?
True humility creates a receptive space. An entitled mindset is already completely full. It's full of its own demands, its own expectations, its own predetermined outcomes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If you walk into an encounter demanding what you want, there's literally no room for the unexpected. But a humble mindset, and if I have found favor mindset, is empty and waiting to be filled.
That is so good.
It acknowledges that the encounter itself is a gift, not a contractual right.
A receptive space. He clears the emotional clutter so the encounter actually has room to happen. But, he doesn't just create a receptive space with his words. He immediately fills that space with sweeping physical action. Which brings us to the next phase of this encounter, radical hospitality and the power of community.
Yes.
Because true humility isn't just an attitude you talk about, right? It instantly translates into movement.
The pacing of the text completely shifts here. It goes into absolute overdrive.
Having asked the visitors to stay, Abraham immediately mobilizes his entire household. The text details this frantic, lavish preparation.
It's intense.
He starts by saying he's going to fetch a little water to wash their feet and get a piece of bread, which sounds very casual, very modest.
Right, just a quick smack.
But then he literally runs to Sarah in the tent and tells her to quickly prepare 3 measures of fine flour for bread cakes. Then he runs to the herd, picks out a tender and good calf, and hands it to a young man who hurries to prepare it.
It's a massive escalation.
He ends up serving them butter, milk, and this massive feast while he just stands by them under the tree while they eat.
To understand the scale of what is happening, we really have to look at the cultural mechanics.
Okay, give us the context.
A little water and bread was the polite, expected minimum for desert travelers. But 3 measures of flour, that is roughly enough to bake bread for dozens of people.
Wait, dozens?
Yeah, it's like opening a commercial bakery in your living room on a random Tuesday.
Yeah.
And meat was a total luxury, rarely eaten except for massive festivals or royal visits. He is pulling out the absolute best of his resources.
That is wild. And Dawn and Khatik have 2 huge observations here. First, they note that Abraham seeks first to serve, not petition.
That's key.
He doesn't hand his divine guests a menu of his life's problems, he hands them a feast. But the second part is what really gets me. He doesn't work alone.
No, he doesn't.
He needs Sarah and the young man to achieve this massive vision of servanthood.
If you look at the background now, you can almost visualize this bustling communal ancient kitchen. It's just a flurry of highly coordinated, intense activity.
I'm stuck on the optics of this, though. Abraham is the patriarch. He's the guy with the vision, the one who actually saw the divine visitors.
Right.
In any modern corporate structure, or even just our modern idea of success, the leader delegates the sweating and goes to sit in the shade with the VIP guests.
Very true.
Why is he the one running to the herd and fetching water?
Dawn and Khatik point out a profound truth here. Believers cannot accomplish the Almighty's vision alone. They need others to come alongside them. Serving the divine is a team effort.
Wow.
Abraham has the vision, yes, but he relies entirely on his community. He needs Sarah's specific expertise with the bread. He needs the young man's speed with the herd.
That makes a lot of sense.
It shows that true leadership isn't about separating yourself from the work. It is the facilitation of communal service. You cannot host the divine in isolation. It takes the whole household.
That is such a crucial micro-application for anyone listening who thinks they have to execute their biggest goals in a vacuum. Whether you're launching a business, building a community, or trying to host a massive vision in your life, trying to do it in isolation usually just leads to burnout. You need a household. You need a team.
The collective effort is what makes the radical hospitality possible.
Mm-hmm.
And Notice his posture at the end of all this frantic delegation.
Mm.
He
Mm.
serves them the best of everything he has, and then he just stands there under the tree while they eat.
Right. He doesn't pull up a chair and sit down to eat with them. He adopts a posture of complete attention.
He's fully present.
And this incredible display of communal hospitality sets the stage for a dramatic reversal in the story. Because the guests have been fed, the plates are cleared, so to speak, and now they turn their attention to their host.
The dynamic completely flips.
They shift from being visitors to being benefactors.
This is where the deeper purpose of the encounter really reveals itself.
They ask for Sarah, who is listening from the tent. And then the promise is dropped. I will certainly return, and Sarah, your wife, shall have a son.
Just like that.
Out of nowhere. Dawn and Katik's fifth observation highlights this pivot. They point out that encounters with the Almighty always leave us better off, whether that's comfort, answers, blessings, or vision.
Always.
But crucially, they note that Abraham never presented a petition. He never asked for a son in this moment. Why? Because the Almighty already knew their desires.
Dawn and Katik do something really interesting here to explain the mechanics of this blessing.
What do they do?
They pull a thread all the way forward to a New Testament letter, 3 John, specifically chapter 1, verse 2.
Okay.
They use this later text to explain the concept of a prospering soul. They argue that the encounter leads to an abundant life that isn't just about material wealth, but about the culmination of an eternal love relationship.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like creating the perfect soil and environment for a rare, delicate plant. You spend all your energy watering it, ensuring it has sunlight, cultivating the environment. When it finally blooms, the flower isn't a payment for your watering. It isn't a transaction. It's the beautiful, natural outcome of the environment you cultivated.
I love that.
Abraham cultivated this incredible environment of hospitality, and the blessing naturally bloomed from that relationship.
That analogy perfectly captures Dawn and Katik's theological point. The Almighty's knowledge of our desires precedes our ability, or even our willingness to articulate them.
Right.
Abraham didn't need to hand over a checklist of demands because he was already known intimately. The goal of the encounter isn't a transactional exchange of goods.
It's not a negotiation.
Exactly. It's not, I give you a calf, you give me a baby. It is the deepening of that eternal love relationship. The blessing flows out of the relationship, not out of a transaction.
It completely dismantles the idea of transactional religion. He didn't earn the promise with the calf. The calf was just his joyful response to the presence.
The hospitality was the environment where the relationship could flourish. But, as Dawn and Katik point out, when the divine intersects with the human, friction is inevitable.
Right, because a miraculous, unasked-for promise inevitably collides with biological reality and human logic.
It always does.
We move from the heights of divine promise to the incredibly relatable human reaction happening just behind the tent door.
A spiritual promise is one thing. The physical reality of their situation is quite another.
The text makes it uncomfortably clear. Abraham and Sarah are old. They are well past childbearing years. The text literally says it had ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women.
Yeah, the biology is firmly closed.
So when Sarah hears this promise that she's going to have a son next year, she laughs within herself. She says, "After I am worn out, shall I have pleasure, my Lord also being old."
It's such a human response.
And then the Almighty asks Abraham why she laughed, and asks this defining question, is anything too hard for the Almighty?
It is the central, lingering question of the entire narrative.
Dawn and Katik's final observation wraps this up by noting that the Almighty had to remind them who he was. Despite Sarah's laughter, her denial, her fear, his plans relied entirely on his perfect love, not on their human perfection.
Yes.
So what does this all mean? Look, I'm going to defend Sarah a bit here.
Go for it.
Honestly, who wouldn't laugh? It's mathematically, biologically impossible. It's almost absurd. And I find it so refreshing that this ancient, sacred text leaves her cynical inward chuckle right there in the story.
They don't sanitize it.
No, it doesn't edit it out to make her look like a perfect, flawless saint. It makes her incredibly relatable to you and me.
We really have to look at the psychology of that laugh. Years of disappointment calcifying into a very rigid biological logic.
Oh, that's heavy.
That laugh isn't necessarily mockery. It is a laugh of profound self-protection.
Really?
Think about it. When you have wanted something for decades, and it has been denied to you by the sheer physical reality of the world, to suddenly be told it's going to happen, hoping again, is incredibly dangerous.
It risks breaking your heart all over again.
Exactly. Laughter in that moment is a shield.
Wow. Laughter is a shield against hoping again. That makes so much sense. She is using her cynicism to protect herself from the vulnerability of the promise.
But Dawn and Katique synthesize the core message perfectly here. The faithfulness of the Almighty isn't derailed by our human skepticism.
That's comforting.
Sarah's defensive laughter doesn't cancel the promise. The ultimate reminder for you, the listener, facing your own impossible circumstances, your own biological or financial or relational dead ends, is that divine plans are rooted in perfect love.
They aren't dependent on us.
No, they aren't dependent on you having flawless faith or never laughing in disbelief. The text invites us to drop the shield of our own calcified disappointment and answer the question, is anything too hard for the Lord?
It's an invitation to trust the source of the promise, rather than our own calculations of probability. Sarah was calculating based on her biology. The Almighty was asking her to calculate based on His capability.
That is the turning point. It is a complete transformation of a single afternoon. We go from passive resting to active serving to profound receiving to confronting our deepest doubts.
What a journey this text is. We've gone from simply lifting our eyes in the scorching midday heat to notice an opportunity to the frantic communal effort of humble hospitality serving a feast under the trees.
It's beautiful.
And finally, we arrive at this place of resting in the reassurance of a perfect love, a love that completely overrides our natural, cynical doubts and our protective laughter.
Dawn and Katie's commentary highlights just how deeply layered these ancient stories are when we take the time to really look at them.
To lift our eyes to the text, so to speak.
It challenges us to view our own daily routines, and especially our interruptions, through a completely different lens.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with. Something to mull over as you go about your day. Think back to the very beginning of this encounter. In verse 1, Abraham was just sitting by his tent door in the heat of the day.
The universal pause button.
Right. In his culture, that was typically a time of forced rest, of complete inactivity. The day was paused. Now, consider your own life. What if the unexpected interruptions in your moments of downtime, the delayed flight, the long line at the grocery store, the random phone call when you're just trying to watch a show to unwind, what if those seemingly annoying interruptions are actually disguised opportunities where your greatest life-altering encounters are waiting to happen?
That's a profound thought.
Are you annoyed by the heat, or are you willing to lift your eyes?
The divine is in the interruptions. That is the perfect question to walk away with.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep lifting your eyes. Until next time.